So hello and welcome to the takeaway for How to Be Brave. My name is Claire Moyer. I use she, her pronouns. I am the Associate Director and Literary Manager for Inis Nua and was also the dramaturg on this production. I am very excited for us to take a moment to chat a little bit about this show, which is essentially Inis Nua's first sort of full foray into virtual theater, digital theater, film theater, hybrid. I'm not sure what the term is. But it's a new adventure and it's a brave new world. So here we are. Before we dive in with introductions, I do want to thank and acknowledge our associate producers on this show. That's the Abstract Company, Eileen and Leo Conway, Margaretta and Jack Noonan, and Rosemary Watt and Charles Arneo. So thanks so much. We really appreciate the support, especially this year. So we're going to take about an hour to talk with our playwright, our director, our actor, and our director of photography. I'm going to let all of them introduce themselves. But before we do that, I do just want to make sure everyone is aware, viewers at home, that we do have a Q&A option. So if you look at the bottom of your screen, you should see a little Q&A. Oh, thanks. I got a reminder that I needed to thank the Charlotte Cushman Foundation. Thanks, Charlotte Cushman Foundation. So you should see a little Q&A button at the bottom. So please, if you have a question anywhere along the time as we're talking, just pop it in and we will try to get to any questions that come up. So we're thrilled to have you all here. So I thought we could go around and introduce ourselves. And one of the perks of doing everything over Zoom, and these days it doesn't feel like there are a ton of perks, but there are some, is that we've been able to have playwrights join us from the UK and Ireland, which is a lot harder to do in normal times because it involves flying people over and hotels and schedules. So I am so thrilled to have our playwright, Siân Owen, join us today. So Siân, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Where are you Zooming in from?
I live in Brighton now, so the south coast of England.
That sounds lovely.
Yeah, it's very nice. It was very sunny today. Yeah.
Very sunny. Nice. We're having pretty good sunny weather here today too. So great. I thought what we could do is go around and have each of you introduce yourselves, share your name, pronouns, what you did on the show, and if you'd like to share a little bit of your background, maybe what other things we might have seen you in or know you from around Philly, or projects before this, or things that brought you here. So just a few sentences just so we can get to know you, because there's a lot of new faces on this show and that's always awesome. So Siân, let's start with you.
So hello, I'm Siân Owen. I wrote the play. I don't really know what to say about what I did before. This is probably the first show that's kind of had the beautiful journey that this one has. So I'm very excited to be with you here all tonight. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. Yeah. Let's hop over to Alice.
Great. Hi, I'm Alice Yorke. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the performer on this show. I'm a performer and creator and director in Philadelphia here. I've worked at Azuka Theater in the show they had a couple years ago called The Gap. And I run a theater company here in Philly called Lightning Rod Special. And so we've performed a bunch of shows here in Philly, most recently a piece called The Appointment.
Thanks, Alice. Oh, is that the poster for it?
Yeah.
I saw it. It was brilliant. It was really excellent.
Oh, thanks, Claire.
Yeah. All right. Next on my screen is Michael.
Hello, my name is Michael. Michael Long. I use he, him pronouns, and I guess I was the director of photography on the show, which means I was in charge of all of the video recording, and I also did the editing. And typically I've been doing mostly projection design before the pandemic. And now that the pandemic has happened, I've been working with a lot of theater companies to do different virtual productions. So yeah, I've sort of had like a foot in both of those worlds. So.
And for those of you who saw our reading series in the fall, Michael is also the director of photography on those projects, which was our sort of dipping our toe in the water of virtual theater because they were readings and a little bit less production value, but you've been involved in every single project we've done this year. So, which is not how it would work in normal times, right? Because we would not usually be bringing on a director of photography. Awesome, thanks. And Tom.
I am Tom Reing. I am the founder and artistic director of Inis Nua. And I had the hubris to start a theater company, and I hope you enjoy it. And I'm very proud to bring How to Be Brave to my audience. I use he and him pronouns. Yeah, I'm excited about talking about the play.
Awesome. Well, Sean, let's start with you, as the play does start with you. So I think the biggest question I've had thinking about the play, as we've been spending so much time on it, is the themes, or sort of the big through lines of it, right, are like motherhood, parenthood, and Newport. Newport is a city that I hope our audiences know a lot more about now. After seeing this show, they might not have known a ton about it coming into the show, but clearly they know more. But what made you want to make a play that sort of took these two themes and connected them?
So when I was writing it, we were going through some big stuff as a family, and I needed to find some brave. And so I started kind of looking back and thinking, like, what would my mum do? What would my grandma do? Like, what would have all the people that had come before done? And at the time, I worked with a company called Dirty Protest, who originally commissioned this. And they're a fantastic Welsh theatre company. And we all wanted to write a Newport play, but we weren't kind of sure how to do it. And then we started talking about what it was about the city that we loved to explore. And one of the things that Newport gets quite maligned, it's like the little naughty sister of Cardiff, and it's quite rough around the edges, and but there's a tenacity in the city that's extraordinary, and a heart like no other. And having moved away when I was younger, I just kind of wanted to go backwards. I wanted to go right back. So back to my memories and back to what happened to me, and then back even further. So it was kind of like just going back to my roots in every sense to try and find some brave. And then the play kind of came out of that. So yeah, does that
Yeah, no, that's great.
It's quite hard to, yeah.
And then in that process, how much of it was like research on Newport history? Because I know there's like a good chunk of history in there, or how much of it was just kind of like the local knowledge of what you grew up with and have heard and pieced together?
So it was a bit of both. As part of the development, we spent a week inside Newport Library, which was joyous. I came back to Newport with my daughter and stayed at my mum and dad's, and they babysat while I just went into the library. And they've got this most amazing local history section, which I've not seen for years, but I used to study in that library when I was like a kid, so it was like a real coming home. It was very cool. But we met with local historians, and we looked through maps and books. I wanted to look at very particular stories as well about like, the barracks and things like that, because that was, my grandma worked in the barracks during the Second World War. And so they were kind of particular folklore stories that like you hear down the pub or things like that, or friends have told you about. So it was a real mix of both. Like the Newport Leisure Centre, that's like that there was like an urban myth that there was like razor blades in the slide. So like it was a bit of everything. It was but it was a joy to go backwards in, and some of the stuff we found, like just spent hours just looking at the path to where we are now. And there was a lot of redevelopment quite a few years ago as well. And so just we talked to amazing people who work in the city as well and work with the homeless, and yeah, we just went everywhere really. We just got right in. I'm a librarian as well as a writer, so I absolutely loved it. I was just in my element. I was just geeking out. So yeah, it was great.
I mean, you do really go everywhere. I mean, the research that we did prior to rehearsal starting, the play touches on so many things and places and historical moments and current moments that it does really feel like this like comprehensive, like sort of dropping someone into this world and getting a full 3D tour of it, essentially.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's what we were hoping for. Yeah. We just want, yeah, exactly that. We just wanted to drop you in and just be like, right, this is it. This is the place. And Newport's got a brilliant humor as well. It's quite a dark humor. So it was really fun to explore that as well. Yeah, I'm glad that worked.
Can you talk a little bit about the so you talked about like the initial process of the idea, working with Dirty Protest, who's a theater company that at Inis Nua, like we are very aware of like their amazing work. Definitely like really exciting projects coming out of that theater. But how did it, the process of taking it from that initial research process and putting it on its feet, getting it to Edinburgh, like how did that all come about?
So I've been really lucky to be supported by Dirty Protest for quite a few years, and I've written a lot of shorts for them. And Catherine Pascal, the artistic director, grabbed me after one of the shorts and said, do you fancy talking more about a full length? So we began talking about those ideas. And so before the process started, we were kind of talking about motherhood and bravery and Newport. And then it was an absolute mayhem of 7 weeks. So we wrote it in 7 weeks. We had Edinburgh as the goal in August. But the initial part was that we would go on tour in Wales. So with a big homecoming in Newport. So we had that first week of research and development, where we did all the research and looking. And then I had a couple of weeks to come up with some drafts. And then we went to a theatre called Chapter in Cardiff, who was so kind to support us. And I literally just sat in there with the team and the actress who was playing in the UK. And we just made a play in a couple of weeks, and it was mental. But it was brilliant. And I think that kind of fast-paced, like, urgency, that really helped us, because it was kind of like we were all trying to get to this place in the same way as Katie is. So it was it was all kind of, it matched the world of the play, frantic and tired.
I can see that.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that you're a librarian. How did you come to be a playwright as well?
So yeah, so I went to university and did English literature, and when I was there, we did an amazing drama module. But I loved all the plays, but like didn't see my world represented at all. There were no Welsh plays, there were no working class Welsh plays. And so I just thought it would be a good idea to give it a try. And I was awful, absolutely awful. Terrible poetry, like just the worst. But I really loved it. So I started to try and do it properly and got on some courses. Then I went to do an MA, and then in dramatic writing in London. And then a few years later, I was lucky enough to win a competition at the Oxford Playhouse. And that was amazing opportunities. I got, really good people. I met good people and got good advice and got on some amazing courses then with like the Sherman, the Royal Court. So I've just been carrying on. So I don't know what the answer is. I just really wanted to try and express the voices, shine a light on all the voices that aren't they're in the dark a lot of the time. So that's where my kind of heart is, to tell those stories.
Nice. Your discussion about how the like writing process developed, that you were sort of working in the room with the actor through the process, is gonna bounce me over to Alice, because I know that you do a lot of devising, which is a very different structure for folks who are not familiar, right? A devising process, you often come in without like a full project or a script. There's like an idea or even like a glimmer of an idea, and you build from there in a rehearsal space. And so it's a very different way than just being sort of like handed a script and being like, and these are your words that you say now. And it sounds in some ways what you're saying, Sean, that like this process, because you're working so intimately with the actor, has like a little bit of that infused in it. And that's not always typical. I mean, some new writing works that way and some new writing doesn't. But I was wondering, Alice, if you can sort of speak of like how your experience, and I know you do other things other than devising, but you spend a lot of time in that world, how that helps with a piece like this, especially a solo show, or informs it.
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the fun things about working in a devising process is you get to be both an actor and a writer. And I never thought of myself as a playwright. I don't know that I even do now, but as I was working as a deviser, I was realizing, oh, I am a teller of stories. I am not exclusively an interpretive actor. I'm also a generative actor. And I have stories I like to write. I like to use words and figure out characters and twists and turns and things. And so in that, when I'm exercising those muscles as a deviser, I'm using both of those tools, right? I'm using my interpretive tools and my generative tools. And when I work on someone else's words, I actually get to still employ all of those skills. It's just that I'm not making words up or the twists or turns, but I get to say like, okay, well, if I was writing this, how would I have gotten there? I feel like more than just putting me as an actor in the head of the character, I get to put myself as a writer in the head of the playwright and think like, oh, okay, I bet the playwright is trying to achieve da, 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 da. I'm like, okay, then me as an actor, I can go and be like, well, then I think I can do this to get that thing.
That makes sense. I think I imagine too, in a solo show, there's a level of responsibility for the words and text in a way that is similar to the level of responsibility around being the lead artist in a project as it's being created. Like you never get to kind of you never get to kind of float in any of the scenes, right? Like it is on you, and you are having to carry a lot more weight within the production than you maybe normally would in a ensemble piece or a piece where you're in scenes with 3 or 4 other people.
Yeah. It's so different. My internet glitched a little bit, Claire, but I kind of think
do you need me to, sorry, did you, is that my internet? Oh no.
No, I get it.
No, Alice is frozen now.
Yep.
This is exciting. Alice, maybe if you want to turn
you should skip me for a minute.
Okay,
yeah,
great.
Claire,
Do what you need to do.
You should skip me for a minute, and I'm gonna find another location.
Cool. Great.
I'll be right back.
I was actually just thinking today how we've done all these talkbacks and webinars, and they've all gone so smoothly with technology. And here we are. Great. Well, we'll hop over to Tom and Michael for a little bit to talk about putting this all together. So obviously we've talked a little bit about the themes and the ideas behind the play. It's very steeped in Newport in a really beautiful way. And so I was wondering, Tom, why you wanted to do this play in Philadelphia and how you help a Philadelphia audience access a play that is so steeped in a city they might not know.
Well, I saw it in Edinburgh during the Fringe Festival, and I didn't have any knowledge of Newport, and I still enjoyed it. Like, it is universal. But I liked what Sharon had said, that, you know, like this thing about Newport having feeling like the ugly sister of Cardiff. Philly is like that as far as New York is concerned, because we're only 90 miles away. And like, I know Catherine, and like when I go to the Edinburgh Festival, I'm seeing Scottish and Welsh and English and Irish plays. All the other cultures are like, oh, we're a global theater. Irish theater is a global theater. Scottish theater is a global theater, and England too. And I want to say, and why I started this company, is that Welsh theater is global as well, in my mind anyway. So when I saw it in Edinburgh, it was just the actress, who was phenomenal, by the way. We did the green screens to give our audience a sense of Newport. But again, I saw it with just the actress, and I don't know if we need anything more. She was quite entertaining.
And then why did you want to do, you've talked a lot about why you think this play has become, at least in our conversations, more important since you first saw it. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that.
Sure. I don't know if you know, this is very hush-hush, but there's a pandemic going on, and everybody has to, you know, like, rise up and be safe for themselves and others, and brave for themselves and others. And I thought that this play is the play we need right now. It's not about COVID, but it's about finding the bravery in all of us, and thinking that like, Katie has bravery, she just doesn't know it, but she's been brave her whole life. And I think our audience, the city, the country needs to be brave more.
Thanks. Yeah. I mean, we started talking about this show, I mean, since you saw it in 2019, and I do agree that it is feels more necessary every day, doesn't it? So can you talk a little bit about how the rehearsal process, and obviously Alice, Michael, please chime in as well, about how the rehearsal process was structured to work in this virtual format. And then also within that, like, how do you adjust as a director when you are creating a product that is completely different than how you are used to working?
Before this takeaway started, I was saying to Alice, we went to the theater to do a promo for Channel 17, and that was the first time I saw her in person. And like, all of our rehearsals, all of our tech, Michael was there, but we, out of abundance of caution, we kept people limited and safe. So I watched and directed this entire show from my computer at my house.
And can you talk a little bit about how do you make that work? How do you adjust? You know, I feel like we've all, in a lot of ways, right? We've moved from being in person for most of our normal interactions, but I think theater, you know, being a collaborative art, has this kind of chemistry, right, that happens in this room. And there's a like Sean was saying about the rehearsal process, there's a sort of like helpful tension that comes from being in the same place and working under specific parameters. I say helpful tension, sometimes it's just tension, but it creates a chemistry that we've sort of in some ways lost moving into this kind of format. So how do you maintain that and create an artistically fruitful process when you're sitting in your living room and so is everyone else?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think trusting the designers, I think trusting the actor, trusting my stage manager, my assistant director, trusting my dramaturg, and it all came together. Even though we weren't in the room together, we still communicated. And I know the dramaturgy for the audience. You constantly said, here, or not constantly, but you were like, what about these things? Like, does the audience seem to know these? I was like, yeah, I think that's good. Or like the cherubs of Newport, which apparently is on the shield on the bridge. I didn't know about that, but I think our audience should know that, and I should know that, and our actress should know that, and our designers should know that. And Claire found it. Really great photos. So the difference between directing on my computer and directing in person, I trusted Alice so much. I trusted our stage manager so much. I trusted our designers, and Michael is one of them, so much. Yes, we weren't in a room together, but we still had production meetings all on Zoom. We still had rehearsals all on Zoom. Alice was in the theater, but I wasn't.
Alice or Michael, anything you want to chime in on? You don't have to.
Sure. I'll say it was just in every way possible a totally different experience from anything I've done before. We rehearsed here in my living room most days of the week, and then went into it just was so strange to say, well, like, I'm going into the theater now and the director won't be there, and I'm going into this experience that's new for me as an actor to film something. I normally only work in live stage performance. So that was a whole learning curve, and to think, okay, well, it just was like, well, if we're going to have something new, we might as well have everything new. Like, we might as well just be all totally unsure and totally uncomfortable, and having to say, like, okay, well, I'll catch you if you catch me when I jump off this cliff into this unknown.
I think when you were talking about that, I was thinking of an example. I was tuning in on part of tech, right? Sitting literally in the chair I'm in right now, watching on tech. And you were doing a moment where you were sort of shifting 3 feet forward towards the camera, shifting 3 feet back, moving between them. And it just like wasn't quite making sense. And it was this moment where we were all like, oh, that's because we can't read the depth of it. So none of it is. And so like as soon as you shifted it and you moved from side to side within the camera, it made sense. But it's like our theater brains are like, well, if there's a person in the room, they can see the shifting 2 to 3 feet. And our film brains that are slowly developing under duress, like, are having to learn these things as we go. And I feel like there's a lot of skills that theater makers have that we are all having to kind of like relearn or adapt or realize are just like no longer apply in these circumstances. Which brings me to Michael. So you've been, I mean, not to speak for you, but you sort of live between these worlds of film and theater and are spending a lot of time this year kind of translating between the worlds and helping people like myself and Tom and Alice find our way into this new kind of terrain of these sort of hybrid pieces. So can you talk a little bit about how with this show you helped translate this theatrical piece and from a that was meant for this like 3D in person, you know, speaking to the audience form into a 2D format?
Yeah, I mean, with all the shows that I've worked on during the pandemic, you know, it's a question of like looking at the story, looking at the script, and sort of figuring out what sort of techniques from filmmaking sort of would help us tell this story, or which techniques from sort of more theater types of performance would help, and sort of finding the right mix of those types of things to see what works. And with this play, I mean, it's really, you know, about an actor telling a story. And I think that to a certain extent, you don't want to get too much in the way from that or distract from that. So I think that, you know, the green screen worked really well in that way because it let Alice just sort of be there and tell the story and didn't get sort of more complicated than that, if that makes sense. And yeah, me and Tom had a lot of conversations before rehearsal and before filming, talking about different ideas that he had and that I had. And we found the different things that made sense, I guess. So
Yeah. And I do want to give a shout out to our senior designer, Marie Laster, who's the person who created the images and worked closely with Tom and Michael as well to make this world all come together. I guess that kind of actually brings me to a question for Tom, which is that when we first found this play for Inis Nua and we're discussing it, it was going to be a play in person with a live audience. You know, it was maybe going to be closer to the experience you had when you first saw the show at Edinburgh. How did you adapt? Like, what were the steps taken to get from like, I envisioned this play in this form to now I'm being forced to envision it in this form, and figuring out how to make that work?
Well, like the camera, I'm sorry, the audience, if we were live, becomes the confidant. And Alice and Michael, like, were like, okay, should I say this? Like, it still is the audience is Katie's confidant, but how does that change? And yes, I wasn't there at the theater, but I saw everything through the camera, which Michael shot. And I could say, oh, I don't like try something different, but I rarely did. But it's an adjustment. And I thought, oh, maybe I'll eventually move to film, but like I want to be in the theater. I want to see an audience. I want to see their laughter.
Bridging off that, I think, you know, you hit on something, right, which is that like the camera becomes the audience, right? So I guess this is sort of a joint question for Alice and Michael. Alice, you literally didn't have a scene partner, right? In a usual one-person show, the scene partner is the audience, so you don't have a scene partner in rehearsal, but you gain a scene partner when you come into previews and tech, or the scene partner is your director, but they've seen it a billion times and they stop laughing at all the jokes 3 weeks in, and it's like, you know, not ideal. So how did you manage that? And then Michael, I don't know how this is a question exactly, but the responsibility of the camera to sort of fill in for the audience in a theatrical play, how do you make sense of that, I guess? Either person.
Interesting. I was thinking while you were asking that question, Claire, about I teach acting to freshman university students, and I talk to them a lot about their scene partners and doing monologues, and how even when you do a monologue, there's still something you're trying to get out of your scene partner. And if you're alone on stage, your scene partner is yourself, and so there's something you need from yourself. So it was a really fun, you know, another fun challenge of this play to be the only performer, and then to be the only performer alone with no audience there. But I do think I had to lean into, that I ended up leaning into like, okay, well, everybody who's on Zoom with us right now for these 4 days of filming, they've seen me do this before. So I'm actually not communicating. Those people aren't my scene partner. My scene partner is the people who are watching who've never seen it before. And I have to make sure that not only do they understand that they're following me, but I have to make them laugh, and I'm not going to know if they laugh. I have to make them cry, and I'm not going to know if they cry. I have to make them angry and not, so it was like, I felt like the audience, even though I couldn't see them or experience the play in real time with them, they were still the people I was trying to move and trying to be with. And just like have an act of just take a leap of faith that they were going to be there with me.
That many weeks later when they see it after it's been edited. Interesting. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
And Michael?
Well, I feel like for me, like my job in terms of the reverse of that is sort of more of a technical thing. Like a lot of it was sort of helping Alice to understand what the audience would see. Like, I remember on the first day we were in the theater together, we had this moment where Alice realized it would be really helpful to know how much of her was going to be in the screen and what are the bounds of what's going to be in the screen or not. And so like those types of things, I think helps Alice know how the audience will perceive, I guess, the show. So
it's interesting. You both hit on some really interesting things around like theory of directing. So, right, Alice, your comment about like sort of anticipating the audience. So like Katie Mitchell always says that the director's job is to be the audience before the audience is there. And, to translate back to the actor what an audience is seeing. And it's very interesting that you sort of had to do that as an actor as well on this. I just think it like really hit on that. And then Michael, you hit on something else and then I forgot what it was. So I'm gonna move on to a different question because I got too bogged down in directing theory. But I did think it was interesting to think about then, to go back to Sean, right? You developed this in this sort of tight bubble with this actor gearing up towards Edinburgh, which is this like amazing celebration of live performance, right? If anyone's been to Edinburgh, it's just like thousands of people take to the streets to see theater and comedy and like anything live. And that's what you were building this show towards. And here we are doing it in a completely different structure. What were your thoughts on watching the show in this format? And was there anything that struck you as working differently?
I was in awe of the energy that you all managed to create, and the urgency, and also the intimacy. Because when we were working originally, we were developing it. There was like a very small team. Laura, the actress, Catherine, and I were really kind of the bubble. And I find that so interesting what Alice was saying about like just playing to the people who are watching, because it just felt like you were just I'm with Tom. Like I really miss the laughs and that sense of like everyone being together, but I don't know whether it's because of the kind of story it is. I felt like we still got so much from Alice, and I just felt like I was on a secret journey. So I think it's all credit to you guys for just being able to do that, and just like, because it's I don't know how you managed to do it without bouncing off people, or also the kind of highs and lows. You had to do that all on your own in a room, just a few of you, and just remarkable. I was just in awe of you all for doing that, because I don't know how you don't do it bouncing off people, or because like in Edinburgh, like Laura would sit down next to an audience member and start like looking at them and kind of feeding back off them. But I didn't feel like there was a massive gap. Do you know what I mean? I just felt like you just did it all so brilliantly. Just that really lovely thing you said about trusting each other. It's just in the heart of it when you watch it. It's like, yeah, this is a tight group of people who've done awesome work in a mad pandemic. So that's all hats off to you guys, I think.
And I want to give props to Michael. We do a scene and he's like, let's shoot it again. I'm like, but the last time was okay.
Taskmaster.
He moved the camera and get another angle. And then I'd see that angle in the final product. And I'm like, oh, I know why.
But that's a really interesting point, Tom. And I think it's touching on a lot of these things, right? The creating of theater is creating an immediate product, right? Like, and part of the process we rehearse, right? And you have to know on day one what your goal is on, you know, day 40 or whatever, right? So there is a sort of a long plan with it, for especially I think in like, as a director is looking at a piece as a whole, or a playwright is looking at it as a whole, right? We're not just being reactive, but there's this like secondary point with filmmaking that we don't have in theater, which is like, we create the piece, we get the audience feedback, we tweak, we keep working, and then we get it to a point, right? We have our preview process where we're like, okay, this is the thing, and we're setting it free in the world. Whereas you're kind of always having to like work in advance of that in film. And I'm saying this like, I know what I'm talking about. I really, really don't. But it's just like, it's remembering the thing I was going to say, but what Michael and Alice had touched on before, it's that like the technical side of all of it works, even if like the skill of acting is a skill of acting, the skill of lighting design is a skill of lighting design, but all of those technical elements shift in a way that is just very, very different, and you have to anticipate. And that brings me to a different question I had, which is for Michael and Tom, which is, how did you create the final piece from the editing process, right? Alice and a number of designers and Michael and the stage manager came into this very kind of contained space, created this, they all went home, and then there was a couple of weeks of back and forth, and Larry Fowler, the sound designer, is involved. So what kind of process was that? And I mean, specifically for you, Tom, like, how do you navigate that as a theater director who does not usually do film editing?
Do you want to go first, Michael?
No, you can go ahead. You can go ahead.
So Michael set up a certain deadline of a number of cuts, and I looked at them and I'm like, oh, this one, it's sometimes it was a backdrop, sometimes it was an angle. I was like, is there any, or sometimes music, which was Larry Fowler, our brilliant sound designer. And it was like kind of still tweaking it when I'd be like, I'm done, I'm out, you know, but you can't with film.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing I'll say is that, you know, one big thing about the editing process is anticipating it. And so part of that is like, while we were filming, if we would get a few different takes of one particular scene, like it's, you know, we marked down, oh, Tom liked this part of that scene or didn't like this part. And so when I'm editing it, a lot of it is just me taking those notes and synthesizing and finding a way to take this part and that part and put them together. And yeah, and then sharing it with Tom and getting his feedback. And then just keep making little changes until we get it to where it's finished. So
How many edits do you think you did?
I think we only did like 3 or 4 actually. Yeah, if I remember correctly.
I think that was on your schedule that we had we had time, and you were great as a collaborator. You're like, what do you think? And I'm like, I like it, but here are the things that would make it better. I wanted star swipes out of every scene, but Michael nixed it. So
Yeah, you also wanted there to be a part where we were in outer space, but somehow that didn't get in the
yeah,
final cut.
yeah, it would be better. I need to talk to the playwright, but how to be brave in space.
I'd watch it. You do have to go refilm it, so it looks like you're sort of floating the whole time, though. Yeah, we want to be accurate, obviously. So I do want to open this up for questions from the audience. We do have one quick question, but if anyone else has anything they want to pop into the Q&A at the bottom, please do. I want to pass along, in case the panelists did not see this, Patricia Toy, Pat, our development coordinator, is being quite effusive in the chat. Thank you, Pat. She's saying she laughed throughout and was brought to tears. Alice was brilliant. And Michael's photography was amazing. His vision for what the end product should be was brilliant. And I'll let you guys read the rest. Thanks, Pat. So we do have one question from Mark. Hi, Mark. How many takes were done before the final editing? Anyone?
I guess I can answer that. I mean, it depends on certain scenes. I feel like on average, we probably did 2 or 3 takes for each one. There were some moments that were just less complex, so we did them in fewer, and then more complicated moments that involved the bike, for example. Sometimes the bike, we would have problems with it and we'd have to do it again. So yeah, I would say on average, like maybe 3 takes, I think.
Great. There was a question that was sort of moved to answered, but I do want to address it a little bit. Who did the backgrounds? What references did they have for the images? What else have they done in theater before? So I do want to give props to Marie Laster, who's an amazing set designer. She did the set design you would have seen if you were an Inis Nua fan for Untitled a few years back by Inua Ellens. So that was her first foray with Inis Nua. She's also worked with Simpatico a bunch. So she just can't be here today because she's on a trip. But one thing I do want to say about that is, yeah, so basically she did a bunch of research into Newport, came up with a bunch of stuff, and then I know, Tom, you gave her some feedback. I gave a little feedback based on my research. She came back, and I feel like it started with like 13 images, and then it ballooned to many, many more images as the show went along, if I'm remembering correctly, Tom.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, it got more and more specific, but she took sort of existing images and altered them to have that kind of feel of watercolor and different feels to that. So yeah, I want to shout out to
the
Marie.
flashback scenes, she saturated more.
Yes, yeah, they have that different feel, absolutely.
Which we wouldn't normally, I guess you could do projections, but we wouldn't normally have that in theater.
Yeah,
that was all new for me.
Enid asks, can you talk about the role of the lighting designer? Yeah, Tom, what kind of conversations? Andrew Coles is our lighting designer. We're big fans of Andrew. He's done Box Clever with us. Did he do our Few and Evil Days, I believe, as well? A few years back.
I think that was someone else, but he has done a number of shows.
I know he did Box Clever. I don't have his bio in front of me. But yeah, can you talk a little bit about your conversations with Andrew around lighting for the show?
Yeah, like he was supported by the backdrop, and like he did it all with the green screen, knowing the green screen will be put in, but the lighting for like when she gets in the police car, like he adjusted the stage lighting. And again, like he was very much about approaching it as a theater production, supporting that it's actually film.
Nice. Anything on that as well, Michael?
Not really. I mean, I just know that Andrew had a lot to do with balancing lighting the green screen in a certain way for the technical things we needed, and also, you know, wanting to make Alice look great and sort of tell the story in the sort of colors and lights that he used for that. So.
And was Andrew involved in the editing process, or was his job essentially within the theater itself?
I think mostly in the theater itself.
Yeah.
Cool. Anne Vogelman says, when Katie is confronted by her mother at the clock, there's an inference that Katie has been unstable before this. I thought this was a little peek into why her mother seemed more patient with her ultimately than many mothers would be. Sean, do you have any thoughts on that or anything you wanted to weigh in on? Oh, you're still muted.
Sorry.
All right.
Yeah, so I think if I could do a whole different play on what happened before. And there were lots of previous drafts that had more insight into what happened before. But yeah, I think I'm sorry, I didn't catch who said it, but yeah, I think whoever asked the questions got very intuitive there. Yeah, I think it is. She's definitely had a hard time. Yeah.
We have also a question from Ko, who was the assistant director on the show. She's a brilliant play. And then, did your little one and mom see the show? I streamed it with my mom. She loved it. And how have these women influenced your work overall?
So is that for me? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So my little, I've got two. My littlest one was 4 when I was writing this, so a bit too young for the swears. But my mum and dad came to see it, and there were lots of tears. And my grandma, my mum's mum, unfortunately isn't with us anymore, but she was in the heart of it all. So yeah, I think it was really emotional. Actually, there was lots of drawers maybe I hadn't opened for a while, if you know what I mean. So when we were doing the research, and I began to kind of tie the city and what had happened. So the speech, for example, where the Nan speaks to Katie, those were real words that were said to me by my mama. So it's kind of, yeah, it was very emotional, and I felt weirdly like I got to know them, and I was like constantly like emailing my mum, like what was going on here, like what happens in, like, you know, when you were a kid, what were you doing, and what was grandma like, and what kind of things were going on, like what were the shops, and yeah, so it was very bonding actually. It was I mean, I'm very lucky to be close to them anyway, but yeah, it was very cathartic, and it certainly did help me find my brave. So massive props to them, because they're just formidable women. So yeah.
Did you at any point, has the show performed in Newport, and were you there if it did, and how did that go?
Oh my god, it was incredible. So we put it on in a few places in Wales, but it came to what's one of my favorite pubs in the entire world. So the pub is called Le Pub, and I used to go there when I was a kid, obviously at the right age, and so we we put it there. It's a big venue, music venue, so they've got a gorgeous stage in there, and that was possibly one of the most extraordinary things has happened. Like, I had like old English teachers come, and like my godfather was there, and like people I haven't seen for years, and like all my best friends came. I cried constantly the whole way through. Yeah, there was something really, really special about being on those streets, hearing those words. Yeah, that's something I'll never forget. I think,
I'm sure.
yeah, I was like, that was it. Like, I would have been happy if like my career had been done at that point. I was just like, amazing, like to see, and the response afterwards was incredible. It was weird. We had lots of kind of grown men in beards come up, and one of them said, "You made my eyes leak." Like, we weren't expecting it to kind of hit the way it did. But yeah, we had some very emotional chats afterwards with people who were just found some strength in it, and that was just incredible. So I'll be forever grateful for that.
That's amazing. That sounds really phenomenal. And I mean, going back to your comment before, right, of like seeing Welsh stories, seeing Welsh working class stories, seeing yourself in shows to be able to have an audience that finds the play so personal is really beautiful.
Yeah, that was something really special.
I want to add one thing too, which is this is like a behind the scenes answer, which is that when I was packing up my bag to move into the theater for the week, I filled my bag full of pictures of my mom and my grandmothers and my girlfriends and my little nieces and nephews and my friends. So I got to sit at my little dressing table every day and on breaks come and have a little snack. And when I was nervous, get to come and sit in the presence of all these women. And my little Easter egg is that the mask I put on at the end is one that my mom made for me. So I was trying to take what you put in words, Sean, and sort of bring it with me like a little cloak.
Love that.
Yeah.
Beautiful. All right, so we've got one more question to get to. Thank you all so much for all the questions. And there's some great comments in the chat, which I think all of our panelists should definitely read because they're all about how amazing all of you are. So definitely take a look at them. This is from Rob, and Rob says, so for Inis Nua and Siân, now that you have done a recorded remote collaboration production, what about the experience was intriguing enough that you want to revisit or investigate after in-person performances are possible? It's a great question, Rob.
Well, I definitely want to see more from you, more plays, and see if they would translate very well to my audience. And I want to go to a pub with you when we're allowed to.
Yes, please. Yeah, I'm hoping this is the start of something lovely. And it's been, yeah, I just can't, it is really emotional to be on the other side of the world and just have, like, it's just, yeah, I'm just in awe of everything you put into it. So once again, thank you to all of you, because it's just soaked in love, I think you can tell. So thank you for that.
I think it's also a testament to you, Siân, as a playwright, because we've definitely, we've had conversations with playwrights about other shows this past year as we've looked, and planning into next season, what we can handle. And there's lots of people who, they want to keep their play live. And I totally get that. That's what it was built for. But there's a level of trust in us and you taking a risk on us to say, like, I know this play was not made in this format, but like, do with it what you can. And there's understandably, like, we haven't produced your plays before. It would have been totally within your right to be like, no, I'm good, thanks. I would like this to work in theater where it was built, which is what it was made for. And it's where our skills as a company are, for 16 years. So so thank you for the trust in our company and this production team to do this, because a lot of people would not have given us that. So thank you.
Oh, bless you. Thank you. Well, you aced it, so high five.
Alice or Michael, anything you wanted to add to that last question from Rob? Totally okay if you don't.
Just made me hungry it was so fun to get to try this totally new form. And I got to also dream about getting to do it live and then getting to have both of those experiences, getting to be Katie on film and maybe be Katie for an audience too.
Yeah. Well,
someday.
One day we will do this in some form. We will be in a theater again one day. So I'm just going to pop in the chat for everyone in case you're interested. Our research page that's on the Inis Nua website. We've talked a lot about Wales. We've talked a lot about Newport today. So if you want to spend a little bit more time getting to know it, I know that we've all spent a lot of time getting to know this city and some of the places that you saw in the background in the show or that Alice talks about in the show. But thank you all so much for joining us. For everyone at home, thank you for your great questions. The show runs, I guess is the term, through Sunday. So if you liked it, please tell your friends, your families, strangers on the street, put it on social media, because, you know, I agree with what Tom said. People need a little brave and a little bit of hope, and this is a show that does that. So thank you all so much. Enjoy the rest of this beautiful spring Sunday. And hopefully next time we'll meet, it will be in person. So thank you all so much. Have a good
Thank
day.
you.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for coming.